SCR 17 in memoriam Andrew Andy Jackson, 1944 to 2011.
Question now arises upon final reading and adoption of SCR 17. Representative Roblan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I get started, I want to introduce the family who's here with us today. I didn't do that in courtesies. And so if they could all stand next to the rail, they'll raise their hand as we go through the list. Wife of 28 years, Linda. Then we have daughter Tina and daughter Diane, son Jamal, and then we have granddaughter Jill, granddaughter Cameron, Ellie, Talon, and Hunter. As many of you know, this has been a rather tragic year in Coos County. Two of our three county commissioners passed away. Last week we talked about Nikki Whitty. Today we're going to talk about a very, very special individual from our community who, after being elected for just 1 month, had a heart attack and died. Andy Jackson was, as one of the sheriffs at the memorial said, a sheriff's sheriff. He started out in life in Fitzgerald, Georgia. He went to Monitor High School in Fitzgerald and graduated in 1963. He was an athlete. This was a bear of a man who, after graduating from high school, joined the Navy, went to Vietnam, came back to California, started a life, but eventually moved to Coquille, Oregon. Worked for the Transportation Department, and then became a deputy. And he was one of those people who, as you got to know him, you understood the depth of this individual and how much he cared about his service of protecting our community. As a county sheriff, he moved into the position of jail commander, and we had a great story, again at his memorial, from a Coos Bay police chief who was one of my other favorite people in the county, who stood about this tall, and she was from high school. She was a high school English teacher originally and became a police officer and then our sheriff. And she said it was really interesting and fun for her as a police chief when someone had done something wrong, and she was the one with this large guy, perpetrator, and she has got him handcuffed and is taking him to the jail. And this guy is saying all sorts of epithets and swearing in the back of the police car. And when she got to the jail, this little lady hands him off to this, I must have been 6'4", 6'5", African-American sheriff, jailer. And so all of a sudden the guy gets very quiet, doesn't say a word now because he knows it's over, and gets put into the jail. Andy was the first African-American elected sheriff in Oregon's history. And when you think of Coos County, that's probably not the first thing that comes to mind. And I mention that because Andy was one of those people who was above all of that. He was our sheriff. He was loved by everyone. He was, as we said, a bear of a man. Permission to use a visual aid. Last session, this is a picture, and people can come by and look at it if they want. It's going to be for the family, of me standing next to our sheriff when he came for Sheriff's Day. He's one of the few people who I felt rather intimidated and small standing next to. His arms were as big as many people's legs. This was an athletic person who took care of himself, and that's why it was such a tragic loss, and who chose to use his quiet persona if he needed to intimidate people. He would just stand there and people would get quiet. But when you got to know him, he was the person who had a great sense of humor, and he was one of those people that schools invited to come talk to kids about the police officers and the sheriff and all of those intricacies that arise in trying to teach kids about right and wrong. He was the perfect person. Now, other officers did say in the memorial that that was true on most things, but he really liked being a police officer because he liked to drive quickly. And oftentimes people would leave long before him and arrive after him when it came to a conference or something that they had to be at. But he kept working through the police department and the sheriff's department, and after having been there in our sheriff's department for 33 years, he retired and decided that he wanted to continue to make a difference in our community. He'd already been the Republican of the Year for our Republican Party. He had already been a member of our Community on Family and Children and Families. He had already been on the library board at Coquille and the city council. He had done all of those things, but he decided that having been the sheriff and recognizing that the county needed to have someone who had his perspective on the commission, he ran for commission and overwhelmingly was elected by Coos County to be a county commissioner. That is what is so tragic. We had a man who had seen in his life in our community that he had a lot to give, and he was willing to give his all for all of us. He did that, and tragically he was taken away from us. He has a great family, one of whom delivers the mail to me on a regular basis. I had to say that. But there are other grandchildren around the country. This is a group that comes from our local county. And so it is with a great deal of pride that I ask each and every one of you to vote for this memorial. Andy will live in the hearts of us in Coos County. The work that he has done will live on long past his life. The barriers that he broke, the opportunities that he gave people, and the opportunities he gave people in our county to be safe will live on long past his life. So again, thank you. I encourage your aye vote.